You have two options before you. Take the red pill and learn more about what it's like to be trans, or take the blue pill and stay in ignorance forever. It's up to you. But if you take the blue pill, get the off this video. Hello all you beautiful people, I'm Mizzz Sally Pryde, this with 3 Z's and a Y, because why not? We need to acknowledge the elephant in the room. This isn't real leather. What can I say? I can't afford it. But if you want to help me get there, subscribe, like this video so I can get closer to 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Or you can sign up for my Patreon at patreon.com/SallyPrydeDrag. Plans start as low as $3 a month. Okay, in all seriousness, the elephant in the room here is that The Matrix were written and directed by 2 trans women, the Wachowskis. There's a lot to talk about here in terms of trans themes in The Matrix. And to be clear, we're only talking about the first film here. But if you want me to make more of these videos, let me know down in the comments and I can make a sequel to this. Neo's journey in particular follows the trans path of discovery.
Morpheus believes he is the one. Do you? It doesn't matter what I believe.
Morpheus believes Neo is the one. However, this is not for Trinity to say. Much like trans people, only you can determine who you are. It's your gender. Only you can know that because, well, who knows you better than you? And as seen in the beginning of the film, the cops in this case really underestimate the power of women.
I think we can handle one little girl. I sent 2 units. They're bringing her down now.
Because, sexism.
No, Lieutenant, your men are already dead.
Hey, look, it's Tig. Agent Tig understands what Trinity is capable of, and Trinity has the line, "Get up," which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that really sort of predates Kill Bill, which I think is really cool. Yay, feminism! And one of the things I find a little interesting is that they used to payphones or stuff like that to get back to their time, but good luck finding one of those today. And Neo wakes up under stress. His life is under stress. And he goes by a different name in The Matrix. But really, that's not the name he goes by, so I'm not even gonna say it. That's his dead name. Neo talks about having a feeling of not sure if he's alive or dead, which honestly, a lot of trans people can relate to that, especially before we come out. That is something we deal with all the time. And they just blame it as, oh, you're online too much, which I guess people nowadays say that? Okay, boomer. God, that's such a dead meme. There's the idea of the white rabbit, which comes from Alice in Wonderland. But it also sort of comes from that song by Jefferson Airplane, which, if only I could afford to play it. Now, Neo goes to this club, and he meets Trinity. Most people assume she's a guy, because, women can't use computers. Neo spends a lot of time online looking for an answer, and that's a pretty close to the trans experience right there. I mean, how many trans people in this day and age have looked up and taken all those tests that say, what's my gender? I know I've taken way more than I can count. And the idea of Miss is in trouble. And everyone must be part of the system, essentially, in this case, which the system is inherently against the idea of breaking down the matrix, because that's what the system's based off of. But in our real world, there's the patriarchy, and the patriarchy is a system that dominates our lives. And that's ultimately where transphobia comes from. Because transphobia towards trans men, to start off with, comes down to the idea of, can you escape sexism? And I know that's not what's actually going on, but that's how a lot of people see it. Then there's the idea of trans women. Why would we give up our male privilege and our place in society to become a woman, a lesser being in society? The answer is happiness, but under the patriarchal structure, it doesn't make sense. And when it comes to non-binary people, you're just leaving the system altogether, which really sort of f***s with the idea of capitalism and cisnormativity in general. Non-binary people, you're awesome. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a like. And if you want to see this video uncensored, you can sign up for my Patreon at patreon.com/SallyPrydeDrag. You can watch a whole bunch of stuff on there, including an extended and uncensored cut of this video. And you can see my comedy special, Pride and Joy, a trans story where I talk all about being trans. It's really funny and I put a lot of heart and soul into it. So head on over there. Plans start as low as $3 a month. Thank you so much. And there's this idea of everyone fits in a box here in this society, which isn't true. And there is dead naming throughout this part of Neo that he is the identity he was given wasn't the one that fits him, which, hello, that's the trans experience right there. And it's interesting that when Neo's sitting in his office, his computer screen's just blank, which sort of symbolizes the futility of the work in society he's putting out. And that shows his mental state as well, that he's really just does not get life in this world. Neo was chosen because he hated life and needed change. He changed because, well, life sucks when you can't be your authentic self. So Neo gets a FedEx, and then there's a phone inside, and apparently the phone just rings when he picks it up out of the box. Because that makes sense. And I know that makes sense, it's just I'm making a joke there. And it's Morpheus from the internet that he knows from his online chat forums. Honestly, I have some pretty good relationships with some mods online, so this is pretty relatable. So Neo tries to escape and ends up dropping the phone off a ledge, and he gets detained due to his fear of heights. And this is somewhat relatable to the trans experience as well, because for a lot of trans people, a big moment in our lives is the first time being outside as ourselves. And we can think about how this applies in this situation here. Neo is afraid to be on the balcony because he's afraid of heights. But by the end of the movie, he's able to jump off buildings and jump from building to building, not have a fear of heights, because he knows, well, the heights can't hurt him. And to be clear, in the real world, heights can hurt you. I'm just saying that in the world of the Matrix, height cannot hurt him. He's holding himself back. And we're often terrified to be our authentic selves. And Neo was told how much heights are dangerous, which is true, but it's not always the case. And by the end of the film, Neo knows who he is and embraces that part of himself and can do things he wasn't able to do at the start of the film. Trans people grow through their transition. Transitioning is one of the most beautiful experiences in the world. Honestly, there isn't much talk about it, unless you watch my comedy special at patreon.com. Pride and Joy, a trans story. Then again, cis people often have this fascination with pre-transition. That's not really us. When we think of Neo, we don't think of the guy who's afraid of heights. We think of the guy who's able to dodge bullets. And that's sort of the idea here, is that the fascination with who we were pre-transition is not really us. In fact, not really a person, to be that honest. That we're just going through the motions of life. And it isn't until we transition that we really start to live. So Tig starts to interrogate Neo.
We know that you've been contacted by a certain individual, a man who calls himself Morpheus. Whatever you think you know about this man is irrelevant. He is considered by many authorities to be the most dangerous man alive.
The idea is, if gender is malleable, then it's a threat to patriarchy. This is why people are so scared of trans people, because we're a big threat to patriarchy. What's his bug thing in his stomach? And the idea is, you may have just started looking for me, but I've spent my whole life looking for you, from Morpheus. So true to the trans experience. We as trans people go through this our entire lives. And I can tell you, before I transitioned, I was looking for myself. That pre-transition form of me wasn't really a person. It was someone going through the motions of life. And well, I'm happy. I live life now and I'm happy. I remember the first time I put a wig on and I saw myself for the first time. And thanks to Mr. Beast, 1,000 blind people also know that experience. And the other thing is, we as trans people, we put a lot of thought into when we're coming out and stuff like that. It isn't just a spontaneous decision for most of us. We put a lot of thought into it, and we often will take years to plan this out and get it just right. And the idea of rapid onset gender dysphoria is a myth because, well, we as trans people come to understand who we are and plan about how we tell you long before we ever tell you. It takes a long time. Self-reflection like this takes a long time. And by the time we hear about someone being trans, they've probably thought about this a lot longer than you have, if not years. And it turns out that bug thing inserted to Neo was real, and much like sex and gender being the same thing, the Matrix is in fact an illusion. And Neo accepts what he sees when he wakes up, which is the trans experience right there. Waking up as your authentic self is beautiful. and just living your life as your authentic self is one of those things that really just changes your life for the better. I know from experience that that's the case for me. And cisnormativity is a prison in your mind, much like the Matrix, that just because it looks to be true doesn't mean it is. One of the things people, especially in their questioning journey, can be a little bit confused about is what gender is, because it is a very confusing thing to question, and the Matrix is sort of like that as well. There are lots of things here, like Neo being the one, it's up for debate here, and the question of why can't someone just tell Neo? Ultimately, it's not for you to tell. And there's the quote, unfortunately, nobody can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. Because that's what it's like to be trans and find your own gender. There is no one way to be a woman, one way to be a man, one way to be non-binary. However, if you're in the process of exploring that, I did make a video where I talk about how to find your gender, and you can see that somewhere on screen right now. The Cliff Notes version of that is, gender is a little bit like color, and it can't really be described in any other way. It's sort of like trying to describe the color blue to a blind person. You can't really do it. We learn what gender is based on our life experience. You know what the color blue is because you've seen the color blue a whole bunch of different times, and you can recognize a new shade of blue without even seeing it before. And that's why it's important to know what gender is in the same sort of way. That we understand what gender is because we've lived a life knowing what men are, what women are, and what non-binary people are. And we break that mold by knowing who we are and our place in society. I mean, before I transitioned, I felt like I had to put in a lot of effort to be perceived as a man. Performing womanhood actively, it just comes naturally to me. Because that's the role I am. And they talk about the birth of AI in this film, which honestly is, I don't know, really close to home. And the question of who struck first or them. It's a shot heard around the world. It's the start of the revolution. And much like how everyone's contained in the Matrix, cisnormativity keeps everyone slaves to the patriarchy. And the mind has a harder time accepting new ideas as we age, as shown in the film. That when they go to see the Oracle, there are a lot of young kids there because a lot of kids haven't been exposed to a lot of the ideas of cisnormativity yet. Because as you get older, you get exposed more to cisnormativity and heteronormativity in this society, and that can make it harder for you to know who you truly are. That's why kids know who they are from a young age, and that we should believe that. Because, well, to a kid, what a boy or a girl is has nothing to do with a penis or a vagina. All it has to do with, my friend's a boy or my friend's a girl, and I'm a lot like them in that way. I can relate to girls more, stuff like that. When you're that young, it really isn't about a penis or a vagina because, well, as you get older, you start to think more about sex, which not everything in life is about sex. And the Kung Fu exercises is very similar to gender exploration. So when you're exploring yourself, you're exploring new ideas, and it becomes more natural to you. And as I said earlier, being a woman to me is natural to me. When I tried to be a man, it was not natural to me. But being a woman, I don't have to think about it, it just is who I am. Only you can know your own gender, and you need to free your mind of the cisnormative expectations of you. Anything is possible, like jumping across buildings, because of course the body cannot live without the mind. And I wish transphobes knew that because, well, it's pretty important. The body doesn't exist without the mind, and people will fight to be unplugged. They'll fight to be free. And at a certain point, Neo won't have to dodge bullets anymore because, well, that's true of the trans experience as well. For a lot of us, we will have verbal bullets shot at us. And at a certain point, we'll become unfazed to that. And that's just the reality of life. Because a lot of people try to leave mean comments on my videos, but really I just sort of laugh it off. And it sort of even in a way inspires me to do better. Because like, wow, there's a lot of people who don't understand what it's like to be trans. Guess I should teach them. And Cypher is a traitor, and he goes back to the Matrix. And he wants to be like Mr. Reagan, which, holy is interesting in a queer perspective. Cypher loves the steak and the money, and he's escaping transphobia. And this is what a lot of times happens to detransitioners. The vast majority of people who transition are trans, and the majority of people who detransition are trans. They're just temporarily detransitioning because they're not in a supportive environment. And even those who are detransitioners and not in fact trans, I don't have a problem with you. It's okay. I understand the situation that it's tricky. But the people who I do have a problem with are detransitioners who weaponize transphobia. Very small percentage of those who do. It may only be a matter of a few hundred people. And when you think about that there are over 1 million trans people, all you need to know is you need to be good with numbers because, well, if you're supporting 100 people over a few million people, your priorities are pretty f***ed up. Denying who we are is a denial of our humanity. You can misgender me all you want, but you'll be in the process because you're denying who I am as a human being. And the Oracle in this film represents a trans elder. She explains that it's not a matter of being right and wrong. She's a guide. And she also can't tell Neo if he's the one or not because that's for him to say. Many people who are questioning their gender want an easy answer. But it's not that easy to question your gender. And again, I made a video all about that if you want to see that. And some people find that gender isn't for them.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
And the phrasing they put here I love. Being the one is like being in love. Only you can know. And I love that sort of idea for being trans because, well, it is a very similar sort of feeling. Love for another and love for yourself are very similar things. That when you love yourself, you'll know. And when you love others, you'll know. And then the idea of deja vu is something that seems innocuous to most people, but there are red flags to trans people, like biological man, biological woman, transgenderism, transgenders are all terms that transphobes use. And when we hear those, our alarm bells start to go off. And he's beginning to believe in himself and can take on this fight. And Tig must have learned to fight from Bernadette because, well, he's using those skills to good use.
Come on, me. Come on. There. Now.
And he says triumphantly at the end, "My name is Neo." And I love, like, proclaiming your name. Seriously, whenever someone tries to dead name, my name is Sally. Sally Pryde. In the end, Neo is saved by the power of love. However, I've already made a joke about Huey Lewis in the news, so yeah. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like. And don't forget to take that red pill and subscribe to go down the rabbit hole even further. And of course, don't forget to sign up for my Patreon. Links in the description. Thank you for watching this video, and a special thank you to my patrons. I can't do this without you. And if you enjoyed this video, you might want to watch my video where I talk about the time drag queens made a science fiction film. That's right, drag queens made a science fiction film. So click the link here on this screen, and you can watch that right now.